Thank you everyone for hanging in there. We're in a home stretch, uh, and it's just been some wonderful information shared by everyone during the course of the day. And I think we're in for a treat. For this next one, I want to introduce my good friend, Dr. Samuel Rowley, who is currently the director. I'm sorry, he's the chairman of the music department and director of bands and wind activities and full professor at Virginia State University. Uh, Dr. Rowley received his degrees from Florida A&M University, his bachelor's of music education, University of Illinois at Sherp and in Urbana-Champaign, where he studied with Dr. Keene, and his doctorate of music education from Teachers College of Columbia University in New York. He's taught in DeKalb County School District, go DeKalb, North Carolina Central University, Palm Beach Atlantic University, Houston Tilson University, and Florida A&M University. And now, of course, he's currently at Virginia State University, and he's fresh off the heels of his Directors Institute, his inaugural Directors Summer Institute that they hosted at Virginia State University. And I chimed in for a few of the sessions that he posted, and there too, they injected a lot of really good information uh, for our for our activity. So Dr. Rowley will be presenting 5 T's of effective band performance. And I will say this, uh, in a short time that he's been at Virginia State University, and some of you have probably seen his recordings. If not, log in and friend him on social media so you can see the things, the outstanding sounds that he's creating uh, with his uh, with his concert band, and he's already providing us with a lot of really good live performance reference recordings that we can use for our standard repertory. So everyone, please, please, please give a warm welcome to Dr. Samuel Rowley and his presentation of 5 T's of effective band performance.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you, Jim, for that quick introduction. I don't even know why you asked me for my bio for it. And then you also better watch that Urban too. And it's supposed to be Urbana, but I got you, bro. All right. All right, y'all. But everybody,
I try to get that A in there.
the fault that Urban. All right. So everybody, welcome to this presentation on my approach to the 5 T's of effective band performance. If you have actually attended my presentation that I did with Jack and his group, probably about a couple of months ago, I did what I call the just the 3 M's of effective band performance as well as preparation. So as a sequel to that, I actually shared this with the Institute participants a couple of weeks ago, is that as it relates to what are the most important aspects that you should be teaching your ensemble every single day? It has always been sort of my overall philosophy that these performance fundamentals should always be at the forefront of everything that we do. So when I refer to what I refer to as the 5 T's, it is playing in tone, playing in tune, playing in technique, playing in time, and playing in texture. So one of the things in which I always talk about as it relates to high school performance is that a lot of times, especially within high school performance, in order to achieve that grade that we are all wanting to achieve as it relates to a superior performance, a lot of things that I have noticed a lot, probably about 90% of the bands that I've heard throughout my entire career all play in tone well, in tune well, in technique, and in time. But it's that last T as it relates to playing in texture, playing in timbre, it's going to really be the things that is going to really take your performance ensemble to the next level. So in this very brief time that I have with you all, I'm going to just sort of like go through my different approaches, things that I've used with my groups, things that I've also learned from amazing teachers like Professor Seda, like Professor Watkins, and all of these great teachers and mentors that I've actually had for over my 25 years of teaching. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. As it relates to playing in tone, Tone quality, in my eyes, is probably the most important thing as relates to effective superior band performance, right? And then one of the main things that I always utilize in order to teach tone is going to always be not only through the music that we play, but also emphasizing it during the warm up. Warm up is really important. As a person who has been into fitness now for well over about 25 years, the most important meal and that anybody can ever eat is going to always be breakfast. It is the thing that kind of gets you going. It kind of gets you established in order to like really make sure that you are ready to go about your day. So as it relates to the breakfast portion of our rehearsal portion, it's going to always be during the warm up. So what I use the warm up to do is to insist in the best tones, the best intonation, the best intonation. But I also utilize this opportunity in order to walk around the room, even with my collegiate students, to make sure that every aspect of fundamentals are in place. Like, are they playing with correct hand position? Are they sitting with good body posture position? Are they playing with good breath support as well? And then, as well as using this opportunity for intense communication. So, so like I said before, you have to always be able to insist on the highest level of characteristic tone quality at the beginning, because if you establish those things at the beginnings, those effective performing habits will definitely follow you in the performance. One of the things that I always do in order to teach really good tone quality is to place selective scales. So for example, long tones, there is no better approach to developing a characteristic tone quality, playing with good breath support, than to play with good long tones. So one of the very first things that we always do, and I learned this from my time actually when I was student teaching at Southwest DeKalb, the very first thing that we will always do is actually build good characteristic tone quality playing long tones starting with the lower register. I get that concept from not only during my time when I was at Southwest DeKalb, but my high school band director, the great Mr. Willie Piper. Back in the day, in the 1900s, what I call it, when I was in high school, which a lot of us was back in the 1900s, he had this book called The Total Range. And if you've never ever saw that trumpet book, it pretty much talked about how to build good total range on the trumpet, all the way from your lower register. So it actually started on your concert B flat, went all the way down to the pedal tone concert B flat. But then it would also work with you on how to develop your upper register playing all the way up to that fourth octave concert B flat as well. But the secret to the book was achieving the best, most resonant tone quality in the lower register first. So one of the things in which we always do, rather if it's through me first playing with the group, and then we are literally going through it, and then I have done these exercises on social media that I've also shared with everybody too. But one of the things in which I always tend to do is to get my band in order to play in the lower register with really good resonance and really good control. And then we will not go on to any other scales or any other passages until they have perfected that. And I have actually still do that and utilize that approach with my collegiate students. And it has proven to be a success. Then breathing exercises. So how many of you guys have ever heard of the breathing gym, right? The breathing gym exercises. Here at Virginia State, we believe in that still till this day. So one of the things in which we tend to do is through the breathing exercises is I would give them, so everybody take out their little breathing gym thing, right? And then we actually do breathing exercises as a unified group. The whole point and what I'm doing is I tell each and every individual in the band, what I want for you to do is to pick a section in the back of the room or straight forward. Direct your sight and direct your focus to that room, because that's where you are going to be directing the sound, right? So one of the things in which I do is I tell them to breathe into out 8, breathe into out 12, breathe into out 16, breathe into out 24. But what I also do within the breathing exercises too is that I take the breathing exercises at the tempo to whatever lyrical piece that we are playing in order to like really get them to play with good breath sustainment throughout. And so, for example, whenever you listen to the VSU Wind Symphony playing lyrical pieces, you would notice that the sound never dies and that the sound never dissipates. That comes from the approach of playing with good breath support. All of those things are always being constantly reinforced during the warm-up period. During the Burke drills. So back in the days, they used to sell this mechanism, and they probably still sell it now, called Burks, right? That you would have the attachment onto the brass instrument. Then the brass players take out their mouthpiece, buzz it, then they're pretty much finger it. But now we are pretty much at a place now, just that you don't necessarily have to always be able to just use Burks like drills in order for that. You can actually be able to just take the mouthpiece out and just do literally buzzing exercises utilizing either a drone or also utilizing the woodwind section as a pitch reference as well. I will also kind of talk about some of the things in which I use as it relates to drone work that I also use in my next section when we are talking about intonation. But also, most importantly, chorales to enhance your band as well. I come from this old school approach that the best way in order to develop a characteristic tone quality is to make sure that your students are always playing good lyrical exercises. You gain that by exposing your students to chorales. So one of the major chorales that we use here at VSU are the James Cardinal Tone studies, something that I learned during my time as a teacher in DeKalb County. And the James Cardinal Tone studies has literally been with me ever since then. So we pick different exercises from the James Cardinal Tone studies every day. We actually sing those things in solfege because I truly believe that in order to really develop good characteristic tone quality, students have to be able to develop the ear in order to be able to mimic sound. So in two presentations ago, when we were talking about jazz, jazz is a really great way to pretty much begin to sort of introduce sound to students too. So I learned that if you develop a student's ear, if they can actually hear what that characteristic sound is, listen to a Christopher Martin, right? Listen to a Wynton Marsalis on the trumpet, right? They can be able to emulate those sounds and then be able to bring those sounds into the rehearsals with them. Establish a characteristic pitch center and tone center during the warm up. Do not cut corners. I have observed a lot of rehearsals throughout my career. And one of the things in which I have observed is that the warm up is just always kind of seen as just a second thought to just get your students up and going and just get them ready to play. That is the absolute wrong mindset to have. It is my philosophy that the warm up is the most important process. You can literally use the warm up to teach elements of interpretation of the music, to teach every aspect of fine musicianship and artistry right before you even touch the music at all. So one of the things in which I always tell my students every single day is that I always have the strobe tuner always going. And let me pull up my strobe tuner right now to show y'all exactly what I'm talking about. I always have this thing always going every single day. And what I have done is that I have actually utilized these different visualizers in the band room. So the students know that until we lock in the unison tuning and unison balance, that we can get this road tuner to sit absolutely still, we are not going on to any pieces of music at all. So as it relates to tone quality, making sure that you establish a characteristic pitch center and a tone center are the most important things in order to make sure that that's established. But then, last but not least, demonstrate for your students what a characteristic sound is, or direct them where to go to find great examples. As as conductors, as musicians, some of the best conductors and musicians I have ever seen are all high level artists. There was a point in time, and there was this so-called false thing going around saying that some of the best players are not the best teachers, right? We have heard that a lot. But I will say this, the best players are the best artists. When you listen to a Leonard Bernstein teach, who is probably the greatest music educator that this world has ever seen, Leonard Bernstein can jump on a piano, and Leonard Bernstein can be able to demonstrate for his orchestra stylistically or artistically what he is striving for his ensemble to sound like. So even if sometimes some conductors might not be the best players in the world, but please always make sure that you are guiding your students where to go in order to be able to find who are those characteristic players for their instrument. That is how you really begin to sort of developing your students playing in tone. Let's go over to the next one, which is my favorite, playing in tune. So so you would notice playing in tone is number one. If you cannot play in tone, you cannot play in tune. So tone quality, being able to develop that amongst your students are really important. But the sort of like drills that I'm about to give you right now are things that I personally use in order to take my students to the next level. So number one, teach students how to tune towards the individualized tendency of their particular instrument. So for example, um, concert B flat is a thing that when I walk around, I hear a lot of people tuning to concert B flat, heard folks tuning to concert A's, heard folks tuning to concert F's. However, those individualized notes are not the individualized tendencies for those instruments. It is really important to learn how to teach your students to tune to the individualized tendencies of their instruments. For example, concert A for the alto saxophone, right? Back finger, one, two, three, middle finger, right? That is their zero tolerance note, right? So as it relates to making sure that your students are pretty much in the ballpark is really important. Concert B flat for trumpets, going up from their concert F, going up to their concert B flat. So F, G, A, B flat, right? Clarinets, which is one of the most difficult instruments to tune, right? Knowing to tune the barrel to the upper joint on their concert F or their G natural, tuning their upper joints down to their lower joints on their back finger, one, two, three, their C natural, right? So the whole point, and what I always tell my students, it's really important to tune towards the individualized tendencies of your instrument because the whole goal is for us to make sure that we get you in the ballpark. Once you are in the ballpark, if I was to hit the ball to right, just to right center field, you ought to be able to know from an actual amateur perspective, or rather if it's a pitch tendency perspective, in order to be able to either sharpen that note or to actually pull that note down. But the whole point is to get everybody to know what their individualized tendency is. Daily singing should be a requirement. Now, everybody got their cameras off right now, so I don't know who's really looking at this right now. Because if y'all was in my class, I would make everybody turn their camera on. But I will say this, daily singing is a requirement. If your students are not at least singing one chorale, singing one unison exercise, then the intonation of your group will be average at best. Have your students to sing. I cannot drive in what this is right here. This is the most important God-given gift of intonation and tuning that God has ever given you. Right? So one of the things in which I do is that I get my students to sing everything in solfege. So you guys have probably heard us do the James Cardinal tone studies, things in unison things, getting them to lock in. There used to be this packet, and then I could not upload this because I shared this with the Institute last week called the band tune-ups. How many of you guys use the band tune-ups, right? The band tune-ups is a really great exercise because it's not notes. What it is, everything is in solfege. So it is pretty much telling your ensemble, like as it relates to like a perfect fourth, right? How to pretty much aim it, how to put your ear in that, right? And what we do is throughout the semester, we do all of those exercises in major and minor keys. So that regardless of what my students run into from a key relationship perspective, I know that their ears are completely locked in. That is why I feel that my group plays with really great intonation. Why? Because I've tuned the ear. I'm just not utilizing a tuner to tell my students to push in and out. So have your students to sing every single day. It can literally start off with just unison, singing concert B flat, singing concert E flat. But what that is going to do, that is going to begin to lock your students' ears in to what is good 440 characteristic singing. Teach students about pitch tendencies for their individualized instruments and assure you as the director know the tendencies of all instruments as well. So for example, right? A lot of times, and I just told this to the institute, is that here about a couple of years ago, we actually got the Con 40Ks with the fourth valve, right? And then so here we are thinking that, all right, we want for our tubas to utilize the fourth valve for their concert Cs, right? Because that's like a terrible tennis note. Knowing those kids, they've never used the fourth valve. They've never even known what it is. They went back to using everything what? In first and third valve, right? So it's really important to teach students pitch tendencies and to teach them why it's important, right? If a trumpet player is playing their concert G sharp, right? There is a way that you can either do trigger 1, 2, or you can either use third valve. If your flute players are playing their E flat, which is a naturally sharp tendency note, right? 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, they can actually have hold that. That's how pedagogically equipped as directors that we got to be. And I've learned this from my teacher at the University of Illinois, the late great James King. Our job as directors are two things: to be able to diagnose issues and to be able to prescribe how to fix those issues. We are doctors in our own band rooms. If a student comes to us with a problem, if it's an actual amateur problem, we ought to have some pedagogical background in order to be able to fix those things, right? So that's why it is important, not for only our students to know their individualized pitch tendencies, but also for us as professionals to know those things as well. Tuning a band to the tuba helps keep the pitch level from rising and develops a darker, more balanced ensemble sound, right? Going back to those Francis Macbeth principles, right? And being able to enforce those principles into your group, right? And then last but not least, as relates to intonation, drone work. Every single day, I do some type of drone work with my group, right? Rather if I am using the energy, the tuning energy app, tuning things in major thirds, tuning minor keys. If we have like chord extensions, if we're messing with things with 7/9 chords, right? I will teach my students those things, but also teach them the individualized tendencies for those chords too. Right. So drone work, I think, is also really important because if you are playing in the key of B flat and if it's going to the key of E flat, your students should be able to interpret what the root is and then always being able to have that root serve as the foundation for it. And then I promise you that would also lead to impeccable intonation as well. Playing and technique. So back in 1985, um, or 1984, when Marcellus was recording the Carnival album with the Eastman Wind Ensemble, and a text in the instrumentalist, he had Wynton Marcellus' secret approach to practicing. And that's an article that I still remember till this day. But what he did was he had this approach with how he would practice. He would always sit down and play his concert F for 20 minutes. Then he would always go into like lyrical exercises, but then he would have some type of technique builder, right? Rather, if it's something that is like an Arbenz, playing out the Saint Jacome, playing out the Charlier, right? Any of those major texts, right? But then I noticed that he always had something technique building every time. So what I've done is I've sort of incorporated his approach to practicing in everything that I do with my group. So after every single warm up exercise, we will always go into in some aspect of technique building. Unison scales and chords is something that I've used. So I explained this to the folks who were in the institute last year. So if you guys don't know, you guys probably already know this. I'm a proud Florida A&M graduate, um, and and one of the things in which we develop within that system, even with our teachers taught us, is that the private lesson approach, how Dr. White would say, private lesson approach to daily teaching is important. So that means that as relates to some type of aspect of skill development should always be important. Because this is going back to what Dr. Pitt said. And this is also very relatable to sort of adjust to sort of the actual Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Once we get students up to that highest level as musicians, we are teaching our students to be independent musicians so that they don't necessarily have to ask us what this fingering is, right? How do you count this particular rhythm? We are all trying to develop our student skill set to get to that point. How do we do that? By things like technique development too, right? Unison scales and chords starts off in B flat. Then it takes you through all sorts of elaborate keys. I was taught in high school that if you can play through this book, there is nothing that you cannot play, right? So when you've had this system of people coming in on the same system, they've been using it since the 1940s and the 1950s with the Stanton High School Band that created all of these great band programs. I still utilize these things with my students on today. So when it comes down to playing like level 6 literature and all of those things, it's not really difficult for my students at this period because even some of my students do not come from the strongest programs, right? But when they come here, we put them on a system of development. And through that system is how they are not only developing as musicians, but our programs and our ensembles are also improving as a result. Something that we used to also do at Southwest Academy too, that I think that is a really great way of actually producing really good technical players. Transcribe instrumental method books, etudes for your students too, right? So I can remember our students would literally be playing characteristic study number 1 by Arbus. Right? Playing that, but not only are they playing it, we got the euphonium players playing it. We have the French horn players playing it. The clarinet players are learning another approach as well. Tuba players, mallet players, right? That is how you pretty much improve those things. It can also be other things. Herbert Clark, technical studies, any of the Class A studies, right? Melodious etudes, any of the Bach cello suites, right? Utilize those things in order to teach your students, but you're also exposing them to high level literature, right? Be able to write out orchestral excerpts, right? My high school band director would actually have the entire group performing high school excerpts in no performing orchestral excerpts all in unison passages. What did that teach us? That taught us ears how to tune across the ensemble, but also it also taught us really good technique development too, though, right? And then I'm going to also say this too. Stress individual musicality development through the promotion of standard solo and chamber literature for each instrument too, right? Have in your file standard literature for every single instrument. for every single instrument. We are very lucky here because I have a world-class faculty that actually develops students to like the highest level. All right. But one of the things in which every single studio has their studio on, and which I do not back down off on, I want every studio to have a curriculum. This is what you will learn by the end of your freshman year, right? Trumpet players, are you on the St. Jude Cone? Trumpet players, are you on the Chalier studies, right? This is your solo that you will learn. So by the time that they come in as a freshman, by the time that they leave as a senior, we actually have a tracking system to ensure that they are progressing. That is how you develop good technique within your group too. And these are things that you can also do on the high school level. Why do I know that? Because my band director did the same thing with us. Playing in time. And I'm going to also try to complete the slide, so just in case if there are any questions for me at the end. Playing in time. This is when you can begin the process of introducing rhythmic exercises that align with the literature that's being performed. So not only will this help out with really good timing, because you can literally write a rhythm on the board and you can write the different interpretational things that you're trying to do. Also working it with a metronome, and you can do that based around any of the major or minor scales as well. But I also think that introducing rhythm patterns and then putting it on the board is important from a reading perspective too. Think about this. The reason why that a lot of our students struggle with reading is because when they're playing, they're having to look at the rhythm, right? They're having to play with a good tone. They're having to play with good intonation and pitch. They're having to balance with the other groups, right? And then they're also having to follow you as the conductor. Y'all, that's a lot. Have y'all ever thought about that? Like, that's a lot. Why don't we reimagine sight reading? Why don't we reimagine sight reading? And why don't we start putting rhythms on the board, right? Or rhythms that are very similar to the rhythms that we know that is going to come across in the music. So when you go to the board, when you work on counting, right, and all of those things, it already eliminates the rhythm. So that when they see the music, guess what they are playing? They are actually playing the music, so that they can just focus on harmonic alignment, expression, and all of those things. And then I have actually noticed that that's what a lot of the outstanding bands do. Folks who are working on their DMA and all that stuff, those groups, that's what they really do. They are not worried about rhythm. I'm sorry, Jerry Junkin is not teaching rhythm. Right? So we need to get to a point where we are thinking about pretty much producing really good individualized musicianship. You start on that by introducing rhythm. So not only will rhythm help out with timing, clarity, articulation, which I'm going to get to next, but it will also help your students out with counting. Metronome work is also really important too, but I tend to use it more to develop the inner beat though, than just the downbeat. So for example, music that is very syncopation driven, right? Right? Knowing where the upbeat lies and the timing of the upbeat will pretty much help out with the overall technical clarity coming from your ensemble as well. For example, Come Sunday, right? When we were working on Come Sunday on the shout section, the beat that my students were struggling with were beats 2 and 4. Think about it. Shout music is 2/4, right? So one of the things in which we actually did was I put the metronome on. And then I wanted for my students to like really feel where that 2 and where that 4 beat is, right? So what we did was every single day I would literally just drill them like, only thing I want y'all to do is through air throughout your instruments. But what I do want to do is, if you guys have articulations on those 2 and 4, I want to hear clarity on the 2 and 4 every single time. And that led to the group, when we were playing shout, playing with better clarity. The other thing that I will say too, because also with interpretation, make sure that you are also interpreting your music in time as well. Do y'all know what I mean by that? With that, you are interpreting your music in time, right? For example, come Sunday again, if you look at the score in the shout section, it says it's supposed to be at 140 plus. But if you've been in the black church, you know shout music ain't that fast, right? So at the end of the day, you have to also be able to make your interpretational decisions too, in order to ensure that your ensemble is playing with impeccable time. Last but not least, articulation and diction work. And notice that I say articulation and diction, because diction is very much related to articulation. So many times, if we are teaching our students good stylistic articulation and diction, that will lead with better clarity, but also with your students playing in time better too. So one of the things in which I like to do, especially at the beginning of every single rehearsal, give my students in a scale or in like a drill different sorts of articulations that I know they are going to see in the music. So for example, it can be staccato notes. It could be it could be things like neutral notes. Do 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 do. But the whole point is to like really make sure that everybody articulation and diction is matching from an actual clarity perspective. And last but not least, playing in texture. And I wanted to use like the last 15 minutes worth of conversation so that we can actually open up if you guys have any questions for me. Playing in texture, blend and balance amongst different colors in the ensemble. So every single instrument in the VSU group has a color, right? And that's how we work on the texture. So one of the things, right, I can say that my clarinets are blue, my saxophones are purple, my trumpets are yellow, right? Every single instrument has a color. So whenever there are sections where you have different instruments playing the same similar part, what we are working on is not really getting them to like just like gel with each other, but what we are really working on is the overall texture and the overall color, getting the exact color that we want. So what we do is, I always tell the students, well, if the clarinets are blue and if the saxophones are black, and if we mix both of those, what is the color that we are going to come up with? And then we go around those things in different into our different sectionals. And then based off of that, that is how we come up with the different textures and timbres that we always get to. So that is something that I would definitely recommend to you guys, and what you all can do too. Call different instruments across the group different colors. And then when they're blending more in with each other, right? Just don't say trumpets blend more in with the clarinets. No, blue blend more in with everything that the black is doing in order to really create that nice purple look, right? So just so as it relates to playing in texture, that is one of the things in which I definitely use. Give explanations of different instrument colors, like I said before, but also I want to talk about this Francis Macbeth thing too, because I judge all around the country, and I like to give detailed feedback whenever I judge. I'm just one of those judges. I just like to give detailed feedback. I have noticed that I have said Francis Macbeth and his whole pyramid concept, and I have noticed that a lot of directors, a lot of young directors, do not know what that concept is. All right. So one of the things in which I would definitely say is stick to that concept. I think that that's the most basic, most foundational concept towards producing a superior band sonority. If your band can play with that nice dark thick organ bass sound, you are already halfway towards achieving a great sound. Try different instruments to achieve the ideal characteristic sound. So, for example, um, I am a trumpet player, as you guys know, but I use all sorts of color instruments with my group, right? So, for the piece Arabesque, I wanted to for the trumpet sound not to be as heavy and not to be as dominant. So what I did was I moved all my trumpets over to cornets, right? In order to really give that nice blend, especially with the upper wind sound too. I use a string bass in my group. Next year, I'm going to actually go up to two string basses in my group because that lower end texture is definitely something that I would like to achieve even more. Also, what I do too, as it relates to different instruments, try different percussion instruments too. So for the VSU Wind Symphony, especially for all of the melodic parts, we don't use just your regular four and a third marimba. We use 5 octave marimbas on everything that we do. So when you listen to things like Big City Lights and all of those are things where you have like the mallets and then it's doubled with certain woodwinds in that very dark texture, then what we tend to do is to put our mallet players on that particular register, but to also make sure that the mallet usage is also blended in perfectly with everything with what those instruments are doing, right? And then even on next year, because we just got a bass flute and we just got an alto flute, right? So I'm already looking at the Mackey's Frozen Cathedral only for next year, but I want for my students to really get those different exposures to those different sort of timbre instruments too. And then also try different setups. I think that certain pieces of music calls for certain different setups because you have certain instruments are blending together on certain passages, or you want to have a certain cluster of sound in a certain setup. That's why it is very important to play around with different setups as well as to explore different setups too. The VSU Wind Symphony, we never just keep just the same setup for multiple pieces. We might be in one setup for one piece, but if we're playing the whole suite in E flat, we might go to a whole new setup. But don't be afraid to explore different setups because what that is going to also do, that is going to also enhance everything you do from a textualistic perspective. And last but not least, I cannot like you can do all those things, but I think the most important aspect of any effective rehearsal is making sure you have a disciplined rehearsal. So I put this on all of my slides and everything that I do, right? As it relates to establishing that effective rehearsal environment. You have to always rehearse in a clean, organized, and peaceful environment, right? Those 5 T's can all come into place if everybody is focused, if everybody's not distracted, and they are locked in to every single thing that you are trying to do as a conductor and for that day. If you show me a great sounding group, I will show you a well organized group. If you show me an outstanding conductor, I will show you a conductor that's also very organized too. So that is my presentation on the 5 T's. And do you guys have any questions?
I'm looking in the chat to see if I see.
Yeah, this is James Sato.
Yeah, Jim.
So I'm gonna sing your praises for a minute, man. It's you have been very I would say bullish about setting up a a very expansive uh, applied faculty for for your school, and a lot of people wouldn't expect that from a school the size of VSU. Number one, just explain. We know what it's about, but explain your philosophy for setting up uh, that applied faculty that you have, and number two, talk about what you did to advocate for yourself to get your university to buy in to actually making those hires.
Great question, Jim. I would have to say this. I think by going to the University of Illinois as well as going to Columbia, um, you tend to learn things in those environments, if you know what I'm saying, right? And when you learn things in those environments, it's just a natural thing to what you do. You tend to reflect back on some of your own experiences, right? And when I think about it, like for example, and I was just telling Dominique this the other day, like when I was in Florida, I was first chair all state trumpet orchestra, right? First chair all state. Say that you know this, right? So, and when I came to undergrad, I was expected for my plan to go to another level. Do you understand me? When my plan wasn't going to another level, and like it was just literally just natural talent that I had, right? Literally natural talent I had, but I wanted to get the same training that my counterparts at Florida State was getting. And let's just be honest. So when I went to Illinois, when I studied with like a Ronald Rom and all of those guys, it opened up my eyes with what a legit applied curriculum should be. And I said to myself, if I ever get an opportunity, right, I'm going to study the North Texases and all of those things, study their curriculum, and to bring those curriculum back to an HBCU. Because at the end of the day, it's not like that we don't have the talent that can really do it. Let's just be honest. The focus is on that marching band. Like when my students come through here, I want to make sure that my students can go, if they want to go to a Michigan, if they want to play in the President's Own group, I got a percussion player, Caleb, who plays set drum on come Sunday. Only thing he said is like, Rowley, I want to come here. I want to study. I want to be in the President's Own. I want to be a Black percussionist in the President's Own. What are we going to do? We're going to set up a curriculum for that. So that's why we just hired Ethan Strickland to come in to really get his mallet playing up so that he can be able to go to the actual next level for that. Let's just be honest. That component is not emphasized in HBCUs, period. And we can live in denial, but it's not. So what I said was, if you guys give me this opportunity, I'm going to establish what I refer to as the Black Juilliard. And that is my goal for everything that I do. You do that by hiring the best of the best. Let me tell you something. I don't care if you Black, blurple, turple, brown, like I want the best of the best working here. I want the best of the best working here. And those are the type of people that we are recruiting. And those are the type of people. And then through that, we are getting a different type of student that want that experience, that want to be able to come in and to be able to grow. Another thing that we also do too is that when they get here, I want for you to see how your talent tax, that how your talent compares to everybody across the nation. So, for example, our students are involved in NATS, the National Association for the Teaching of Singers. I send my students to Surtech. I send them to the ITG. I send them to the National Flute A Association Web because I want for them to see how their talent stacks with everybody else. Because you could be the hot shot at Grambling, right, Don? Or you could be the hot shot at FAMU. But then when you get out here in this world, you actually see that you don't stack up to that talent. So I want to make sure that when our students leave out of here, wherever they want to go, whatever dream that they want to have, if they want to perform on the world's greatest concert stages, it's my job and my goal in order to get them there. Appreciate that, Jim. Any other questions?
Awesome response.
Any other questions? Y'all ain't got no questions for me? Man, like y'all a little quiet little crowd. No questions about the 5T's. So everybody band is going to be playing with impeccable intonation and tone quality and all that. Huh? We good? All right.
It just means you were thorough, Doc. That's what that means.
Appreciate it. How would implemented? Okay, let me go back. That was one question. Yeah, so great question. You can literally implement this in a middle school group or in a high school group. This concept, I actually began to design this concept when I was actually a middle school teacher at Chapel Hill Middle School, right? So there's like some aspects of this that you can still integrate these things as relates doing the warm-up. Performance fundamentals can be taught on the elementary level, can be taught on the high school level, can be taught on the middle school level. Just find time in your daily warm-up in order to pretty much just implement those fundamentals, and all of those things will definitely carry over to the music in which you are performing. But those tone studies, trust me, the James Curnau tone studies are a gem. James Curnau tone studies are a gem, and they were being utilized like back in Atlanta over 20 some odd years ago, and then plus it's actually still something that I use until this very day.
So hey, this is Seda again.
Mm-hmm.
Elaborate a bit more because I see the question, and I know some of these topics today kind of seem to aim high for
Sure.
school and collegiate musicians, but
Yeah.
I can attest that Sam Rowley was utilizing these concepts when he was a middle school director with a seventh grade band.
Seventh grade.
And you're talking about he created, I think, 3 or 4 all-staters as a seventh grade band with those concepts. So with that seventh grade band that you had, and they weren't big, it wasn't a lot of them. But one thing I recall, and we were the beneficiaries, of course, is that
Mm-hmm.
uh, uh, their facial structure was good. And, we've talked about armature and all these things today. And they had a really good sense of pitch center. So what do you do to get a seventh grader who may have only been playing their instruments for a year or two, or maybe just started a few months ago, to really buy into that concept and deliver it to the point that they perform impeccably well from a pitch standpoint, from an expression standpoint, and from a timbre standpoint as a seventh grader?
Theta, it all starts with long tones. It all starts with long tones. And back in the days, do y'all remember? I know from my band director, back in the days, we would actually sit up in front of a strobe tuner, and we would have the strobe tuner up. And the goal was to make sure that when you play, this strobe tuner doesn't move. That was Willie Pye from thing. So as relates to teaching intonation,